Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Two Tired Teachers. I'm Vinay,
And I'm Rumi.
and we've been gone for a while. We're living in this panorama situation, and we're not able to get together and do our videoing and podcasting like we want to. So we're still in separate situations trying to make this happen. So we are actually trying to get back to a regular routine where we come and bring you some pertinent or what we feel is pertinent information more regularly. So this is the beginning of our, I guess, new season. And we are happy to be here to share some relevant information that has nothing to do with the panorama. So today we're going to be talking about vertical alignment. And this is something that's near and dear to both of our hearts. I think every situation I've ever been in, I'm always asking or suggesting that there be vertical alignment. So that's what we want to kind of talk a little bit about on today. And hopefully some of the information that we share will be useful to you. So I think we're going to start with like just a general overview kind of definition of what vertical alignment even is. So basically, it is organizing curriculum from one grade or content area to the next. That's basically all it is. Mm-hmm. It's just a way of organizing it so that you can see it from where it begins with pre-KK and goes up to 12th grade. That's pretty much all that it is. So why in the world is that important? Hopefully we will talk about that in a few minutes. Now, I know for Rumi and I who are in Texas, we can go to our TEA site and they will give us, there is a resource there and anybody in Texas can go click on that resource and they have it lined in the Texas resource for you already just typed out. So you can get K through 12 side by side and you can literally see this is what was taught in this grade and so forth and so on. So for me, Rumi, I think this is really important because for teachers that get stuck in one grade, so like I've taught 5th grade most of my career. Mm-hmm. If I've never ventured out of 5th grade, then I don't know what happened in K1, 2, 3, or 4. Mm-hmm. And teachers are infamous for saying things like, that teacher last year didn't teach you anything.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they taught them something. We taught them something. Mm-hmm. It just may not be at the level of where you want it to be this year. And I think it's important that we understand vertical alignment, or at least look at it and pay some attention to it so that we can, as we are looking at what we have to accomplish for this year, we can say, okay, this is what they should have gotten last year, and they should have gotten this last year, and they should have gotten this one. And we can also answer a question within our own selves about why is it that they didn't teach this then? And we can kind of think about it developmentally. Well, a 2nd grader wasn't ready for that. A 3rd grader developmentally wasn't ready for that. So they couldn't teach that then, which is why it's your responsibility to teach it now. And I think that's a really important piece that we don't do enough with in planning. And we don't do enough of it in talking to our colleagues so that we don't blame the teacher before us for not having taught them something.
Exactly. And interesting enough, talking about where we're staying, same thing. I have been most of my time in 5th grade. And yet it's very important to know the whole progression of knowledge. Because not usually, when kids come to you and they have some kind of unresolved knowledge, you need to know where it comes first. So you can start building step by step and not just trying to fill a hole that is there, but just building step by step. For me, vertical alignment and vertical planning has been always the most important part when talking with teachers as a coach. It has been the basics for a teacher to know, okay, before me, this is taught, and I have to prepare my kids for what's coming after me. With us in our DA, on when they give you the resource, they specifically show you just the process standards, because they explain pretty clearly there is you're working with the process in mathematics. The small details can be different from grade to grade, but where you're building the mathematical thinking process, this is how the progression goes because of where each group is in that point in development. So I am a strong believer each teacher should know at least what comes before them, the grade before them, and what is after them, at least. Now, specifically for the progress standards, I am a big fan of Graham Fletcher and his progression in mathematics. And it's the first thing that I show the teachers and we talk about. In my school, we did something. We did 2 steps forward in that vertical planning and alignment, and it produced very good results for us.
And I want to throw in here right now that why I think what she's doing is extremely important and really valuable is because, let's be honest, if we, each of us look at our own curriculum, whatever the curriculum is that you're teaching, and you're looking at your scope and sequence that you get from the district, if that's the only thing that you depend upon to have your students prepared for the next year, we're never going to get them there. No. And then we're always wondering why there's this gap. If you actually pay attention to the vertical and you line it up with your curriculum, even though, and I'm putting up the air quotes, it's supposed to be lined up with your objectives, and everything are supposed to be lined up that way to, fill in all those gaps. If you really look at your scope and sequence and you really, in an honest way, think about everything that happens throughout the year and how you have to cut some stuff and nip a little bit and cut a little here and push this together and just totally forget this altogether, this is why students end up with gaps. So if I know for sure this was what was important for them in the 3rd grade that they should have gotten, and this is what's important when they go into the next grade, so I have to make sure that I get this in to make sure that all of this stuff weaves itself together. And I think a lot of times we, when I say we, I mean me as well, in the early years, you just depend upon what they give you in that scope and sequence, and we don't go past any of that. And I don't know if all districts do this, but I know in our districts, they give us at the end of our content, once our scope and sequence is finished, when you get up to testing time, they give us some content that they call bridging the gap to the next grade.
Yes.
All right. So, but when you literally look at it, is it really? And if it is it really going to bridge that gap? Because you don't have that many weeks left in the school. And by the time you get to that time of the year, everybody is over it, including the teacher. So you're not going to put that much effort into it. So this is why I feel like what she's saying is very, very important for us to think about as we're crafting our lessons and we're making our plans at the beginning of the year. What is going to give me the biggest bang for my buck when I look at what they should have gotten last year and where they're going next year? What is it that I really need to craft in here to make sure that they're prepared?
It's one of the big points in planning with us specifically, starting from what was the last year knowledge, okay? Because especially for the year that we just started, because we have a lot of kids last year that were virtual, but not exactly virtual, in the whole pandemic situation. So when we sit down to look at, okay, what is the basic of the knowledge that I'm going to teach right now in front of me? What is the basic from last year? So I can start from there and moving forward. what is the strong foundation that I'm doing in my grade, and what is the one step forward that I can give my kids so they can be ready to go for the next one, or to have that little jump in the next grade.
So hold that thought for just one moment, and this is what I'm going to throw in for all of our Texas people. This is why it's important for you to know the difference between readiness and supporting.
Yes.
Going.
Sorry, but you're right, exactly. Once the teachers and I sit together to look at the vertical alignment per grade, the first question is, okay, what is that they learned last year? And usually by the time that we come and start the big planning, because we have a session of planning, we have some kind of data. Now, if you don't know your vertical alignment and you have a data that tells you your kids are not ready for what you're going to teach, then how do you know where to go and where to start? And once the progression goes through the year, then every time that we get together, it's like, okay, so this is what my kids that have this little gap or enormous gap needs. This is where I'm starting. But then I have the kids that are already a friend, so I'm going the next grade and giving them the next step. And this becomes a differentiation.
Yes.
Immediately right there, when we're talking about that, we already know where the differentiation comes in.
And I'm going to say at this juncture, if we're really, really concerned about differentiation, this is the better way to do it, because that's really differentiation as opposed to what we do most of the time. I'm just going to put that out there. Okay.
True. And you know, and it's interesting because as always, and I am not the one to say I never did it. No. You try to differentiate in your grade. So you can go to the ones, okay, I will have one differentiation for hands-on and one that it's a pictorial representation of models and one is digital, but you're dealing in your same position in your same grade. Instead of the big differentiation and throwing in the scaffolding where you start off what the needs of the kids are, why did not get it? When you plan your lesson and you are executing your lesson, pretty much immediately you will know if the group got it or did not. They will react to that. So the question is, what did I do first? Is it my lesson plan? What I said maybe was not interesting for the kids. But then the second one is, where was my level of lesson? So if I have kids that not even got to this, it's like there is a differentiation, I have to go down. And the ones that went through fast, you can't keep them staying there because you have kids behind. You have to push a little bit forward. So that's another step of differentiation for them.
And let me also say, and I know math is not, and I'll say some districts, I'm not going to say it's all districts in every state. True. But math, I feel like we don't do as good a job at this as reading or ELAR does by giving a beginning of the year assessment.
Agree. It's one of those things that we will have to, like it or not, we need to go through the beginning of the year assessment. So with us, for the last, I want to say 6 years, the beginning of the year assessment.
So that you can know how to or where your students need to be.
Okay. We had a problem with the internet. Go back.
What?
Yes, just repeat what you said. Come on.
Okay, so I was gonna ask, yeah, all right. So I feel like the ELAR content does a better job of this one particular thing. Not saying this is every state or every district all over the whole entire country, but from my experience, math does not give a formal beginning of the year assessment. ELR they have a beginning of the year, a middle of the year,
Mhm.
along with your benchmarks and so on, so
Mhm.
forth. A lot of teachers don't give an actual beginning of the year assessment either,
Mhm.
because they don't have to.
True.
I feel like we need to do that in math as well, because based on what you were saying, as far as the differentiation and knowing who's where, that's the best way to start your year. So before you even get into it, I mean, you have your initial plans, but before you get too far along, you have some kind of data that you can use to know who's where, and this is really where I have to go. So while you're, getting all those things together, I have some data to back up why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it gives you a better place to start. And I just think, we need to jump on that beginning of the year formal assessment train.
And while we had that internet thing, I was saying that with us for the past 6 years, with the exception of the year that I was out working with you, we do have a beginning of the year test. Maybe not the best ones, okay, but we try to have something. I do know about states that start them, the states that are using the MAP program, they will start with that, and it's pretty good. It does not work for us in Texas because the growth test that they have checking the kids is from 2012. Standards change in 15. So it does not matches the MAP. So that has prompted us to have a assessment in the beginning of the year. We try to do it. We have had years that the second day you're doing the assessment. We have had years where it's at the end of the first month and somewhere in between, but we do, and this is our baseline. I'm starting from here. In my opinion, it has helped. Definitely, because immediately this is what I need to recover in the next weeks, or this is where I need to start rebuilding again. In my opinion, helps. The beginning of the year assessment, it's one of probably most important assessments that you can do.
And if you happen to be in a district or a building where they are stressing that you do either guided math or some kind of blended learning situation where you're working in a small group, where you're just doing that mini lesson and then you're going straight into your groups and you have to actually teach the meat of your lesson at your small group, this is the perfect setup for that. This is the perfect setup. So for those people that don't know how to establish their groups, and you don't have anybody to help you establish those groups, that beginning of the year assessment is your greatest tool to help you decide who goes into what groups, and that's your start right there. That is the perfect start for you. So think about that. If you happen to be in that situation where you've not done guided math before, you've not had to do blended learning before, and now you do have to teach everything in a small group, because I know that's where our building, that's our situation this year, that everybody is being put in that situation where you have to teach a guided math, blended learning kind of situation. Secondly, it's going to help you with your running records. So in Texas, because of these new House bills that have been passed, we know that even as math teachers, where it used to be just reading teachers that had to formally keep the running records, we have to keep running records as well. So this is a good way to get you set up for that as well. So talk to me about how it looks in planning. How does vertical alignment look in planning?
Well, we do one big planning session where every grade teacher is present. Okay. And we literally go for a process take and how it looks like in each grade and what each teacher is doing for those specific standards. And usually takes around whole day and a half to go through everybody. But the interesting part is that even when we're sitting down and you can hear right now, right there, okay, the teacher in 4th grade listening to the teacher in kindergarten explaining the skip counting, and the 4th grade teacher goes, oh, the tables of multiplication.
Mhm.
It's like they see how the progression comes from kinder and how important is the basics there, and how that affects all the way up to 5th and more.
Right. I mean, another example would be like 10 frames.
Exactly.
Why 10 frames are so important. So then by the time you get up here and you're working with base 10 blocks, the progression is right there. So that's why that's important. Yeah.
Exactly. And the same way is you have the upper elementary teachers, once they listen to the lower grades make tens,
right,
they go, oh, there's my number bonds.
Right.
So that is very important. And I usually choose, questions, because you can actually find it. It's PA provides them in the scaffolding part. Right. And it's the same question and how it goes from kinder all the way up to 5th grade, and how it changes and what it's added or what it's missing, because we do have grades where you have kind of a jump, especially in geometry. 3rd grade will see something that they will come to see again all the way to 5th grade, but not in 4th, because 4th will complete what 3rd grade was seeing, so they can deal with whatever it's in 5th grade. And it's important, and we do that once in the beginning of the year, once in January, and then once before we start organizing for the big push before the state test. The other way that we're doing it is getting the plans from the grade before you, okay? And we take from them, because every single lesson plans will have a due nows and exit tickets. We get from them their exit tickets, and we incorporate them in the spiral reviews.
That's awesome.
So they will go through, and this year I actually find the program, and I'm on the process for the district to authorize the program that it's constant spiral review. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And I was gonna say, along with everything that you're doing, it just sounds really awesome. Another thing that I'm gonna throw out there that teachers might think about, if you're having a vertical alignment training like she's speaking about, or planning like she's speaking about, is also make sure, and we had this conversation in our last planning, but it wasn't vertical, but we had the conversation. Make sure that you also talk about vocabulary, about using the correct vocabulary. And I know, I don't know how it is wherever you are, but I know where I am. We've gotten in the habit in elementary school, we use tricks to teach them how to do math. And then as they get older and those tricks don't work, especially once they leave well, sometimes just when they get to 5th grade, it doesn't work anymore. Or when they get to middle school, those tricks no longer work, and they don't understand the whole process or whatever it is that they needed to have done to be able to do the situation. We know in primary, those things are cutesy, or just in elementary period, those things are cutesy, but they're hurting our students in the long run. So we had a long conversation about trying to make sure that we use the correct terminology and the correct vocabulary as we go across this continuum, so that we don't have to try to make them unlearn something the way that they learned it in another grade. And the strategies as well, don't shortcut the strategies. There may be more than one, but don't shortcut them just to make it easy for them to help me get the words out. I don't want to say it incorrectly. Don't shortcut the strategies just so that you can get them through a test, because you're not creating a critical thinker. You're creating a test taker. And then once they get to the next level, they don't have the information that they need to grasp on to the next concept or the next level of the concept, because they only had a trick or this one little trick strategy to do just for this year, and it's not continuing the process for the next level, if that makes sense.
More than makes sense. Each year I have somebody, you know, that I have to either convince or straightforward say, no, it's not happening. I have my personal, not favorites, like the grouping and regrouping in face value.
Did you see me roll my eyes?
Everybody borrows for something, go
Did
next
you see
door.
me roll my eyes though?
I know, I'm like, I'm not going anywhere next door, and it's not borrowing from everybody. I know it's cutesy, but reality is that your kids need to know why this song is working. And if they cannot use the words I'm grouping and regrouping, then the song is going to go over the door, not even in your grade. It's going to go in 5th grade when they look at the decimals and the fractions.
And it's so the same thing.
You're not doing anything. And the other one is sometimes I have that physical reaction. Divide by 3. You don't divide by, you divide into.
Yeah.
I mean, just use so they will know that by is because you are literally skipping, but into because you're separating into equal groups. So when you say into equal groups, they know exactly what it's saying, and what the process is what they're doing. So I do have those little things that I'm looking at everything. I don't like, for example, we're adding, okay, what does adding means? So if the kid cannot tell me we are combining, that means the teacher never used the word. So putting it together, and putting together is combining. And I'm very visceral on that thing, because with us is good, but once they hit high school, and they sit and they look, and we have a lot of students that come to visit. And thanks God, we have a lot of students that come back and visit our school from high school, you know. And it's like, I am not good with algebra. Hold on, you were one of the star kids here. What happened? I mean, I don't understand what they're saying. Got it. Let's talk about vocabulary. You know, but
I have that same visceral reaction with multiplication. When we're doing the algorithm and you get to that second number and they scratch, lay an egg. That takes me over the edge as well. So all of those things, they make perfect sense to get the students to set it up and do all of the, you know, all the different little things they have to do. They have no reason to that, but it doesn't make them understand why they're doing it. So now if I'm multiplying 2 by 2, where I only put that 1 0 down there, then they're good with that little ditty. But as soon as you add that third number, when they get in 6th and 7th and upgrade, and they have more than just 2 numbers down there, and you have to add a 0 to each place value, they have no clue, and they're continually adding 1 0 and not understanding why their answers are coming out wrong when they've done all this multiplication. It's because they only learn scratch, lay an egg.
The third
don't do that. Don't do that.
I mean, I'm in the same position. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to use the trick, you know, there's not that, but your kids need to understand why that it's working in this moment. You know, I do have the problem with dividing fractions. Fraction divided into fraction. And with the keep, flip, what was it? Change, flip, whatever the thing was. And if you ask why does it works, and you never taught your kids what reciprocals are, they would not know. And then suddenly they will hit algebra again, and it's not going to happen this way, and they're lost. Now, if you explain and they know, then by all means, if the trick makes it easier for you, by all means go. But they need to know why. You know, for example, when we multiply, and I know, especially in the standard algorithm, I don't go on the standard algorithm before doing the area model and the partials. Because when you look at the partials, you literally say The second, if I'm multiplying by 23, it's 23, but the next one, you're not multiplying by 2, you're multiplying by 20. And the partials will tell them this is why you need the place value moved. But those are little things that, and we discuss a lot in my school, a lot. You have the teachers that will try. And as I said, I am this kind of coaches that convince me. And if I ask you kids and they know why is it working, but I'm very visceral when it comes to specific ways of the vocabulary. You know, the other thing that I'm especially since the second grade when it comes in, the way, for example, 25 divided by 5, okay? And when the way that we try them to write it, because we just doesn't say the correct way for the division signs. So 25 divided into 5, there is a divided sign, but when you have to write it with the famous house, right? You actually say 5 divides 25 to get those groups. And then if you don't use the correct vocabulary, you have kids that don't know where to put the 5 and the 25, and it's all over the place. Mm-hmm. You're not telling them. So if they write it like this, it's because that's what you told them to do. And when the teachers kind of get and say, oh, okay, a majority of us were taught the same way. So yes, we had to figure out why else. But it's like, just say it on the way that it is. Mathematics has a specific language for that, and it always works. And it's very important for the lower grades, specifically when it comes to language, lower grades, to see what comes up in the vertical alignment and how that incorrect language, mathematical language, affects the higher grades, because they pretty much don't understand what they're doing when they hit there, because you did not use the language, the words, or you did not explain the basics of what is going to happen in the upper elementary.
Yeah, I agree. And it takes a little time.
Yes.
To research it or really dig into it, but it's worth at least having a conversation with a teacher that's in a grade before yours and a teacher that's after you. It's worth at least having that conversation. And I would also throw out there, suggest it to the powers that be at your school to give you an opportunity to have a sit down conversation across the grade levels to see that too. And in our last little 12 minutes, I know we didn't say that we were going to talk about this, but I also want to have you elaborate a little bit and tell me what you think about, along with the vertical, how about the horizontal? Because I feel like that is important as well. And I always talk about my former partner that I had for many years here in Texas, my language arts partner, who I feel like she was awesome when it came to us working horizontally. That is important as well. And I cannot stress enough that we should not be teaching our content in isolation and not making kids understand that it goes across, math is across every content. All the content work together. So reading and science and math and language arts and writing, all those things work together. They are all intertwined. They're all interdependent. And we need to be making them aware of that so that they don't, kids are walking out saying they hate math because they think it's a separate entity within itself, and they do math all day long. You don't hate it. You hate it in isolation because you don't understand that it works across the curriculum.
Interestingly enough, and this is a little bit more of neurological point of education, you learn to read and you learn to speak a language, and yet your brain already works mathematically. Exactly. You just have to look and distance. You learn to measure the distance, but your brain already knows what the distance is. So it's already incorporated. What we did, our best year, I mean, the campus went from a complete F to A in 1 year. On top of the talking vertically and working together, we did the switch of teachers vertically. So the teacher of 5th grade will go to 3rd grade. Once per week, the teachers will switch. Now that came to a different situation where after that, the teachers will sit together and they will be, okay, so you doing this strategy and you're showing in this, and I'm doing it completely different. So we got to the point where we sat down and said, okay, across everything, we're using this because this works and because this is correct or anything else. So now you have teachers that are showing the same strategy going on. Can you tweak it? Yes, so by the grade, but the kid from one grade goes to the next grade and it's exactly the same basic thing that they're doing. Instead of, here's the PEMDAS, here's GEMS, I mean, what? Seriously. In every grade they have to learn something. No, it's the basic going through. But it came because we switched teachers vertically. And they actually liked it. Now, horizontally, interestingly enough, and it came not with math, it came with the science part. We start using science a lot to integrate other subjects. So we had this part that it's called writing science, where they had a prompt to write about science. And then we had math connection in science. So they will talk about, for example, how big Earth is, and they will have to find the difference between the planets mathematically comparing. So we use first science to integrate everything. But then was like, okay, so now we have to look at the math part. And where we start tackling down is with the numberless problems, where they have to read the problem and there is no numbers, and then gradually integrate the numbers. And at each presentation, they have discussion between them. And then we started looking, okay, so can we do that same thing? Because, you know, numberless, it did not came from us. It's on the internet, it's a free access for everybody. But then we start looking, can we do the same thing, integrating science and integrating reading? So we're not there yet, but we're trying. For us, interestingly enough, was not mathematics. It was the science that kind of opened to integrate everything else.
And for those of you in Texas, you know, with the change in how the star is going to be given, that's one of the things that, you know, is now being pushed, that there be more writing in math. So a lot of things that we didn't have to do in math before, some of us just did it just naturally. It's going to be a necessity, a non-negotiable going forward, because they're adding that piece into math as well. So if you haven't been having your students write in math, this is a good time to start getting them used to giving you some complete sentences with vocabulary, with math vocabulary.
So it's kind of an interesting situation in Texas, because you will have complete groups that have been doing that part kind of the whole year, or at least starting November, because you have all of the ESLs and lab kids that have to take the TELPAS. So it's the part of the TELPAS, they have to have 2 writings presented for science and 2 for math. So you will have teachers that start slowly integrating, but it was not across for everybody.
That's right.
Do I think I usually don't agree with our education agency, but on that one, I'm sorry, yes. It develops even the thinking. The thinking process can be developed by writing. So that will help a lot for the kids too. If you have to write complete explanation of what you're thinking in math, big deal for me, big deal.
Yeah. So in our last few little minutes that we have, I am going to also plug Rumi's favorite person, Graham Fletcher. I had not looked at his progression videos up until she just kept harping on it. So I actually sat down and watched them, and they are like the best. So I will suggest that if you've not, and we're not getting paid, he doesn't know that we exist. We're not getting anything from him. If you've not watched the Grant Fletcher videos, and we'll put the link in the description below for you to look at, take some time and watch those progression videos, because they are eye-opening. So even if your district doesn't have your side-by-side from kindergarten to 12th grade, this is a good piece for you to look at and understand just basically overall math progression. This is really a good way to see how it works from the beginning to the end, and why this is important here to get to here, and why this is important here to get to here. So we will put that link in. Awesome videos. Awesome. I have used some of the things that he has. Our district has given us, just bits and pieces of him, but sitting down watching those progression videos were very eye-opening, and I'm sure they would be for you. So we'll definitely put those in the description below so that you can go to that link. Anything else you want to say about that?
Just talking about that, I know it's in the beginning, it's kind of asking a little bit too much. It feels like if the teachers go look at them before you and after you, but once you get used to it, it becomes part of your process, and it's very easy to look at. I mean, if you don't do anything else, like when I say, watch the videos of Graham Fletcher. He is absolutely on point of what it's done, how it's done, and what exactly has to be per grade. So the kids will build that mathematical understanding. Vertical alignment for me and for our campus has become the basics of success. Straightforward, the basics of success. We kind of pulled pretty much a miracle because of deciding, okay, we're going to do, even though it's a little bit too much in the beginning, but we're going to do it correctly for the kids. This year, we're starting pretty much from zero because of the loss that we already have from the pandemic. And if we don't get used to see and identify, listen, this kid cannot do that because this part is missing before me, and I need to work on building to be ready for the next part, we're just going to drag the gap for years and years and years.
Yeah. And we may have to come back to this topic again, because this conversation could just go on forever and ever.
Yes.
We're not going to take it on forever and ever, but it could go on forever and ever. But at least for the beginning of the year, if you don't have the opportunity to sit down with teachers from other grades, at least go to your district's educational resources and see if they have it laid out. Like I said, in Texas, we have it laid out. TVA has it laid out, and I'm sure at the beginning of the year in your PDs, you probably get a copy during your like we do. We get a copy every year, or they at least say, here's the link, make sure you go look at it. Where you have that information, because I think it could take years off of your teacher life.
Yes.
If you know what they were supposed to have gotten and what they need to have to get to the next grade, it will take some years off of your teacher planning. So with that, we hope that we've said something that's been helpful to you. And as we always say, if you have any questions or suggestions, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and we will be glad to get back to you with that information. And if there's anything that you would like for us to talk about, put that in there as well. And we will see you the next time on Two Tired Teachers. Bye.
Bye, people.